I just wanted to give you a little bit of space to kind of give a backstory of your poem and where you was in your life at that time.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me, obviously. So the poem was written on the second year of my degree. So I was at the University of Warwick at the time doing my degree in person-centered counselling, and I was pregnant as well. So at the time I was pregnant, and I went through a really hard period of time where I just didn't understand myself. I was so emotional. I was crying all the time. I was completely overwhelmed. And yeah, basically, I wrote the poem as a part of journaling. So my poems, well, my journaling tends to come out in poem form, regardless of whether I want it to or not. That's just my default thought process, I suppose. And so yeah, I wrote this poem, and it was really about a loss of sense of self, and I didn't really understand who I was in this environment. I moved away from my family about 9 years ago, and yeah, I linked it to that, and I linked it to the feeling of belonging and not really understanding myself in this particular setting. And yeah, like I say, when I was diagnosed, so I was only diagnosed about a year ago on the 23rd of January last year, with autism, or as an autistic person. And yeah, it's sort of taken on different meaning from there. I mean, I realise now that in year two, I wasn't particularly overly emotional. I was fully dysregulated, and actually just existing as an autistic person uh, that was struggling with that self-regulation. I think maybe the hormones contributed to that. But yeah, when I look at it as an autistic woman, that's that's the new meaning it's sort of taken on, is that actually I existed in a certain way before, and then moving environments has completely changed that for me. So yeah, that's a bit of a background.
I mean, I can hear all those transitions in your life at that time as well. And just, I mean, it's really interesting that when you wrote that poem, it had one meaning and then that meaning changed later for you. I mean, that can happen often when writing. Things can come up on a bit of paper that we actually don't know what they mean ourselves completely, and that's the beauty of it. Um, yeah, I just wanted to hand it over for you now to share your beautiful poem with us.
Thanks very much.
Thank
So
you.
it's called I don't know who I am here. So I shall read it to you now.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am here, so far away from home. I used to sit so proudly on my rural Norfolk throne. I died when I left my comfort, my confidence forgot. I complain about my family, but in truth, I miss my lot. I knew who I was there. I knew where I fit. I loved every inch of it, every little bit. I didn't have to worry about where I belong. It wasn't until I left there I knew I was home there all along. I seem to cry so much now. I never did before. Half the time I don't even know what I'm crying for. But I'm no longer met with concern, sympathy or love, just people thinking, for God's sake, or again, or Lord up above. So I ask, if you see me crying, please just let me be. I don't know who I am here, and I'm mourning the old me.
And you got a diagnosis for autism a bit later on, and I'm sure there are many people out there that are wondering whether to get a diagnosis or not, and how that would be and how that works.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I was 32 when I was diagnosed, so it was quite a bit later in life. And you know, I've questioned for a long time, sort of my neurological identity, I suppose, in that, you know, I've always felt very different and unusual to other people, but I've been able to mask quite exceptionally well. So if ever I tried to discuss my experience with other people, then it tended to be dismissed quite a lot, like a complete rejection of my experience, which I found very difficult. Even like my closest people, my husband, you know, even he was like, "No, you're not autistic. Don't be silly," sort of thing. Um, and then I read a book. I read Ellie Middleton wrote a book called Unmasked, and it was incredible. Reading that for me was really just every page I was like, okay, yep, this is me. yeah, I've never been more sure that I was on the right track, of identifying where this experience was sort of coming from. And yeah, so I started the process of becoming diagnosed, and I went to the doctors, which that was a very scary process because it's handing the power over to someone else to make that decision. You know, I knew I was autistic. I know I'm autistic, but giving that power to someone else to be able to say, yes, you are autistic, or no, you're not autistic, was very scary. But since getting the diagnosis, I feel very different towards myself. I'm a lot more forgiving of some of my traits that are not always very helpful in my life, but then also recognizing my massive sort of strengths that come from being autistic as well. You know, I write assignments in one day. I tend to be very quick. I'm at working. I get very hyper focused and things like that. So there are a lot of strengths to it, which I need to recognize too.
So many people, possibly including myself, that might have a suspicion they may be autistic and know that and haven't gone to get a diagnosis. So it's great to hear how that was for you and how that has helped you in your life. And again, that was a really beautiful poem to go with it as well. And just if anyone wants to just re-listen to that poem with with the autism diagnosis in mind, to maybe see a little bit more how it was for you, the two different poems. Yeah, then please do that. I just again thank you very much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on here, Natalie.
Thank you for having me, Ricky. It's been lovely speaking with you.
You too. See you.